It was a late evening in the city, when lights from coffee shops and small stores painted the sidewalks with a soft glow. People hurried past each other, their faces tired from long days, their eyes fixed on reaching home. Yet among the busy, footsteps and cold air, a small, fragile scene unfolded quietly in the corner of a crowded street. A young mother, holding her baby tightly against her chest, stood near the entrance of a small café. She looked lost, her clothes worn out, her hair messy, and her arms trembling from both exhaustion and the weight of her little one. The baby cried softly, the kind of cry that carried both hunger and discomfort. Passers-by noticed but looked away, each one too busy to pause, too occupied with their own struggles. The mother tried to calm her child, whispering words no one else could hear. She gently rocked the baby, but her own body showed signs of breaking, eyes swollen, lips pale, hands shaking. It was not just the weight of the baby she carried. It was the weight of days without rest, nights without enough food, and mornings filled with uncertainty. Just a few feet away, Keanu Reeves had quietly entered the café. He wore simple clothes, nothing to make him stand out from the crowd. His hair was tied back, his shoulders relaxed, his presence calm. He was known to the world as a great actor, a Hollywood star, but in that moment, no one seemed to recognize him. He stood in line like everyone else, waiting to order coffee. Yet his eyes were not on the menu board above the counter. His eyes were drawn to the mother and the child standing outside. He noticed every detail, the way she tried to smile at the baby even while holding back her own tears. The way she shifted, her weight from one foot to another as if her legs might give out at any moment, and the way her eyes darted toward the café, perhaps hoping for a warm place to sit, but too unsure to walk inside. The sound of the baby's cry grew louder, making some people glance with irritation. One man even shook his head as he walked past, muttering under his breath. The mother lowered her gaze, as if she was apologizing for existing. And that was the moment Keanu quietly stepped away from the line and walked toward her. His footsteps were soft, his voice calm when he spoke. "Hi there," he said gently. "Are you all right?" The mother looked up, surprised that someone had spoken to her. She nodded quickly, as if trying to hide her struggle, but her shaking hands gave her away. "I'm fine," she whispered, though her eyes told another story. Keanu crouched slightly so he was at her level, his eyes kind and steady. "Your baby seems hungry," he said softly, not as a question but as an observation filled with respect. "Would you like to come inside? It's warmer there." Tears welled in her eyes, but she hesitated. People often looked at her with judgment, sometimes even with disgust. But this man's voice carried no judgment, only kindness. Inside the café, the warm air carried the smell of fresh bread and coffee. Keanu guided her in without making it obvious. He didn't act like a rescuer or a hero. He simply walked beside her as if they were equals. He opened the door, let her step in first, and made sure she found a quiet corner near the window. The baby's cries softened once they were inside, comforted by the warmth. Keanu went to the counter and ordered food, not just coffee, but warm soup, bread, and tea. He asked for warm milk for the baby, too. He paid quickly and brought everything to the table himself, placing the tray gently in front of the mother. The woman stared at the food, her lips trembling. She hadn't expected this, not from a stranger. "I don't know how to thank you," she said in a broken voice. Keanu smiled faintly, his eyes soft with humility. "You don't have to," he replied. "Just eat and rest for a while." She tried to speak again, but her voice cracked with emotion. She reached for the soup, and for the first time in days, she felt the warmth of kindness, stronger than the coldness of the world. The baby, finally, calm, closed his eyes and fell asleep against her shoulder. And as she ate slowly, tears running down her cheeks, Keanu sat across from her in silence. He didn't ask for her story. He didn't demand explanations. He simply gave her dignity, The space to breathe, the respect to exist without shame, and the kindness to remind her that she was not invisible. What no one else in the cafe knew at that moment was that this simple act was only the beginning of something much bigger, something that would ripple far beyond that quiet corner. The cafe was quiet, only the soft sound of cups clinking and low voices filling the air. The mother's hands still trembled as she held the spoon, though she tried to hide it. She ate slowly, almost as if she feared the food would disappear if she took too much at once. Her baby rested peacefully now, tiny breaths against her chest. Keanu watched silently, not staring too long, but enough to make sure she was steady. Outside, the city noise carried on. Cars rushed by, laughter echoed from groups of friends, and yet inside that small corner of the cafe, it felt like time had slowed. There was a tenderness in the way the woman held her baby, and there was patience in the way Keanu sat, giving her space. But as the minutes passed, a quiet tension grew. People in the cafe began to notice. Some whispered to each other, curious, about the strange pairing of a weary mother and a man who looked familiar but remained calm and unnoticed. A couple at the next table looked over, their expressions filled with judgment, as if they were questioning why someone like her was even there. The mother noticed their glances and lowered her head. Keanu leaned forward slightly, his voice low but firm. "You don't need to look down," he said gently. "You're doing your best, and that is more than enough." His words were simple, but they carried weight. The woman let out a shaky breath, the kind someone holds inside for too long. "I don't even know your name," she whispered, her voice fragile. "Keanu," he said softly, though he did not add his last name. He didn't want her to feel like she owed him anything because of who he was. He wanted her to feel safe, not small. She looked at him for a moment, her eyes searching, almost as if she could sense there was more to this man than the kindness in front of her. "I'm Mia," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "And this is Ethan." She stroked her baby's cheek with a mother's love that no hardship could erase. Keanu nodded with a soft smile. "Ethan is lucky," he said. "He has a strong mother." Her eyes filled with tears again, not from sadness this time, but from hearing words she hadn't been told in a very long time. "People don't usually call me strong," she admitted. "They just look at me like I'm failing." Keanu shook his head slowly. "Strength isn't about how perfect everything looks. Strength is about showing up for him every single day, even when it's hard. That's what I see." Mia looked down at her son and let those words sink into her heart. They felt like a hand reaching into the dark, reminding her she wasn't invisible. But as the warmth of the moment grew, so did the weight of reality. Her phone buzzed weakly on the table. The screen was cracked, the sound faint. She hesitated before picking it up. A message flashed across the screen. "Rent overdue. Landlord waiting." Her hands tightened around the phone and her eyes clouded with worry. Keanu noticed the change in her face. "Bad news?" he asked gently, careful not to intrude. She shook her head quickly, wiping her eyes. "It's nothing. I'll figure it out," she whispered, though her voice betrayed the heavy truth. She had no plan, no way out. Keanu sat back, silent for a moment. He didn't push her to explain, but he felt the weight of her silence. He knew what it meant to feel cornered by life, to wonder how the next day would unfold. The baby stirred lightly in her arms, and she kissed his forehead. "I just want him to have a chance," she said suddenly, her voice breaking. "I don't care about myself. I just want him to be safe, to grow up without this fear following him." The honesty in her voice cut deep. It was raw, unpolished, the kind of truth spoken only when someone is too tired to pretend anymore. Keanu leaned forward again, his tone calm but firm. "You're not alone in this moment," he said. "You don't have to carry it all by yourself." Mia blinked at him, unsure if she should believe those words. Life had taught her that promises often broke, that help usually came with conditions. But there was something in Keanu's voice, steady, humble, free of judgment, that made her want to believe him, even just for tonight. Then came a twist neither of them expected. The cafe manager approached their table. His expression was stiff, his voice cold. "Sir," he said, glancing at Mia with a frown, "we've had a few complaints. Maybe your friend would be more comfortable elsewhere." Mia's face turned red instantly, shame washing over her like a wave. She held Ethan closer, ready to leave because she knew this feeling too well, being asked to move, to step aside, to be unseen. But Keanu didn't move. He turned his calm eyes toward the manager and spoke with a quiet strength. "She's staying," he said simply. "She's my guest. If that's a problem, I'll take my business somewhere else." The cafe grew silent. A few people looked up from their phones and laptops, sensing the tension. The manager shifted uncomfortably, realizing he had no ground to stand on. With a forced smile, he mumbled, "Of course, sir. No problem." He walked away quickly, leaving behind the weight of what almost happened. Mia stared at Keanu, her eyes wide. "Why did you do that?" she whispered. Keanu looked back at her, his voice steady. "Because respect isn't something you earn, it's something everyone deserves." Her lips trembled again, but this time she didn't look down. For the first time in a long time she felt seen, not as a burden, but as a person worthy of dignity. Outside, the night grew colder, but inside, a quiet warmth began to spread, not just from the food or the lights, but from the small acts of kindness that were slowly stitching her broken faith back together. And as Keanu sat across from her, calm and patient, she began to wonder, why did a stranger care this much? And who really was this man sitting quietly in front of her? The night outside deepened, the cafe windows glowing against the dark streets. Mia sat with her baby nestled close, and though the warmth of the place calmed her, her heart still carried storms. She kept glancing at the door as if afraid that at any moment life would push her back out into the cold. But Keanu's steady presence across the table created a strange sense of safety, like an anchor holding her in place. She tried to read him, this quiet man who had stepped into her life without warning. There was nothing loud about him. He did not force questions. He did not stare. He simply sat, listening without needing to fill the silence. It was unusual. People often demanded her story before offering even a small ounce of help. But this man, he offered help without conditions. Suddenly, the baby stirred and let out a sharp cry, his small hands curling tightly. Mia panicked for a moment, bouncing him softly, whispering soothing words. Her eyes filled with worry that the other customers would be annoyed again. But Keanu leaned forward and whispered calmly, "It's all right. Let him cry if he needs to. No one here has the right to silence him." His words felt like a shield, and Mia relaxed just enough to breathe. Ethan soon calmed down again, his eyes closing as he drifted back to sleep. For a few minutes, there was silence between them, the kind of silence that wasn't empty, but thoughtful. Finally, Mia spoke. "You don't know me," she said slowly, her voice quiet. "You don't know what I've been through. If you did, maybe you wouldn't sit here." Keanu met her eyes, his voice steady. "Everyone has a story. Some are heavy, some are hidden, but none of them make a person unworthy of kindness." The simplicity of those words hit her harder than she expected. She looked away, blinking back tears. "I used to believe that too," she admitted. "But life? It took that belief away from me." He nodded, not pressing her, just allowing her words to settle in the air. But inside Mia, memories began to stir. The days she tried to survive on almost nothing, the jobs she lost when she had to bring her baby along, the nights she prayed Ethan would not wake up hungry. She remembered the people who looked at her with pity but never with real kindness. She wanted to tell her story, but the fear of judgment held her back. Still, the quiet way Keanu listened made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she could let out pieces of it. "I came here with nothing," she whispered, her hands tightening around her son. "I thought I could build a life, find work, take care of him. But doors closed, one after another. I'm late on rent. I can't even afford enough food most days. And the world doesn't stop to care." Her voice broke, and for a moment she regretted speaking. But Keanu didn't pity her. His face carried only a soft sorrow, as if he truly understood. "The world can be cruel," he said, "but it's not the whole story. There are still people who care even if they are strangers." Mia looked at him, puzzled. "Why are you one of those people? You don't even know me." Keanu thought for a moment before replying. "Because once, when I was struggling, a stranger showed me kindness. It changed everything. I promised myself I'd pass it on whenever I could." Those words lingered between them, and Mia felt a warmth she hadn't felt in years. But just as the moment softened, another twist arrived. The cafe door swung open, and a tall man in a heavy coat entered. His eyes scanned the room before landing on Mia. Her face turned pale instantly. "There you are," the man said sharply, his voice cold and cutting. "I've been looking everywhere." Mia's hands shook, pulling Ethan closer. Keanu noticed immediately, his calm eyes sharpening with focus. "Do you know him?" he asked softly. Mia nodded faintly, her lips trembling. "He's my landlord." The man walked over, his presence heavy and harsh. "You're 2 weeks late, Mia," he said loud enough for others to hear. "No excuses. I want the money tomorrow, or you're out." His tone was cruel, with no regard for the baby in her arms. The cafe grew tense, whispers rising among the customers. Mia's face burned with shame, tears threatening to fall. She tried to speak, but no words came out. Keanu slowly stood up, his posture calm but firm. "She just needs some time," he said evenly. "You don't have to speak to her like this." The landlord narrowed his eyes at him. "And who are you? Her lawyer? Her savior?" He scoffed, looking Keanu up and down as if he was nothing. "Stay out of this. It's between me and her." But Keanu didn't back down. "Respect isn't optional," he said quietly, yet his words carried force. "Especially when there's a child involved." The landlord sneered, muttered something under his breath, and finally stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The noise made Ethan stir, but Keanu quickly sat down again, his calmness steadying the shaken air. Maya couldn't stop trembling. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered, fear still in her voice. "He'll only get angrier." Keanu leaned forward gently. "Sometimes people like him need to be reminded that power doesn't give them the right to treat others without dignity." Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they weren't just from fear. They were from the shock of someone standing up for her when no one else ever had. As the night grew deeper, Mia realized something she hadn't felt in years. She wasn't completely alone, and yet a question still burned in her heart. Why did this stranger care so much? And what part of his own story made him understand her pain so well? The cafe lights flickered softly, the hum of voices around them slowly fading as night pressed deeper against the windows. Mia still clutched her baby, though her hands were trembling less now. The echo of the landlord's harsh words lingered in her ears, but so did the calm strength of Keanu's voice when he stood up for her. That contrast filled her with confusion, fear from one man's cruelty and comfort from another's kindness. She looked at Keanu closely, trying to understand him. His presence was unusual. He was not restless like the others in the cafe, not impatient, not judgmental. His stillness made her uneasy, but also safe. It was as if he carried storms inside, yet chose only to share calm. "Finally," she whispered, "why did you defend me like that?" "You don't even know me." Keanu leaned back, his voice quiet but filled with weight. "Because no one deserves to be treated like they're invisible. You're doing your best, and that deserves respect." Her lips parted as if to respond, but no words came. For years she had been judged for what she lacked, never praised for what she carried. And here was a stranger telling her that her fight mattered. A silence followed, heavy yet gentle. Mia broke it, her voice raw. "You said earlier that someone once showed you kindness when you were struggling. What did you mean by that?" For the first time, Keanu's eyes shifted slightly, as if he had been asked to open a door he rarely touched. He was quiet for a long moment before he finally spoke. There was a time when I felt like I was drowning. I had lost people I loved. I was surrounded by noise but felt completely alone. And one night, when I had nothing but grief, a stranger sat beside me on a bench. He didn't ask for details. He didn't try to fix anything. He just listened. That one act reminded me I wasn't invisible. Mia studied his face, sensing the depth of pain behind his calm tone. She wanted to ask more, but she also understood. Some wounds were too deep to describe in full. Before she could reply, the baby stirred again, fussing in her arms. Mia reached into her small bag and pulled out a nearly empty bottle. The milk inside was cold and she winced. I can't even give him what he needs properly, she whispered, shame flooding her voice. Keanu leaned forward, his tone firm but kind. Don't say that. You're giving him something more important. Your love, your presence. That matters more than anything. Mia shook her head, her tears falling. Love doesn't pay rent. Love doesn't buy food. What if he grows up resenting me? Her words cracked open a raw truth, one that had been eating at her for months. Keanu's gaze softened even more. He won't resent you, he said quietly. He'll see the strength it took for you to fight through every obstacle. Children remember love more than luxury. They remember sacrifice. Mia pressed her lips together, holding Ethan closer. Deep down, she wanted to believe him. Then something unexpected happened. A young woman at another table who had been listening quietly walked over. She placed a folded note on the table and whispered, You don't know me, but your words reminded me of my own mother. Please take this. Without waiting for a reply, she hurried out of the café. Mia unfolded the note with trembling fingers. Inside was a small amount of cash, enough for a meal or two. Her eyes widened, and she looked at Keanu in shock. Why would she? Keanu smiled faintly. Because kindness spreads. Sometimes it just needs a spark. Mia stared at the note, her tears falling harder. She wasn't used to receiving help without strings attached. The moment felt unreal, almost too heavy for her heart to carry. But just as hope touched her, the landlord's shadow returned. The cafe door opened again, and he stepped back in, this time with another man beside him. They both looked angry, their voices sharp as they moved closer. You think you can humiliate me in public? The landlord spat, glaring at Keanu. You've made a mistake. The cafe grew silent, the air tense. Mia froze, clutching Ethan tightly. Fear surged through her chest like ice. Keanu stood slowly, his movements calm, his eyes steady. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't flinch. She has a child in her arms, he said firmly. Leave her alone, the landlord laughed bitterly. You think you can stop me? She owes me. She can't hide forever. The other man crossed his arms, trying to look threatening. Some customers shifted uncomfortably, unsure if they should intervene. Keanu stepped slightly in front of Maya, his posture protective but not aggressive. Listen carefully, he said, his tone quiet but commanding. Debt does not give you the right to treat someone without dignity. If you choose to continue, you'll regret it. Not because of me, but because people are watching. The world doesn't ignore cruelty forever, the landlord sneered, but something in Keanu's eyes made him hesitate. It wasn't anger, it wasn't fear, it was conviction. It was the steady fire of a man who had walked through pain and refused to let injustice stand. The tension held for long seconds until the landlord finally scoffed and muttered, This isn't over. He and his companion stormed out, slamming the door once again. The cafe let out a collective sigh of relief. Mia's shoulders shook and she whispered, Why do you keep standing up for me? You don't even know how much of a mess my life is. Keanu turned to her, his eyes gentle but unyielding. Your life isn't a mess. It's a battle. And battles don't make you less, they make you human. Sometimes all a fighter needs is someone to stand beside them. Her tears spilled freely now, not just from fear, but from the weight of being defended, respected, seen. And in that moment, Mia realized something she had not allowed herself to believe in years. Maybe kindness was real. Maybe dignity could still exist even for her. But deep down, she also wondered, why did this man seem to carry her pain as if it were his own? The cafe had grown quieter, many of the earlier customers now gone, leaving only a few scattered tables occupied. Outside, the streets glimmered with rain, each drop tapping against the window like a slow reminder of time passing. Inside, the warmth of the lights fought against the cold night. Mia sat in silence, holding her baby close, her heart still racing from the landlord's threat. But as she looked at Keanu sitting across from her, a strange calm began to settle over her trembling body. She had never met someone like him before. Someone who didn't just notice her pain, but stepped into it. Not out of pity, not out of duty, but out of something deeper. And yet a part of her resisted. She had been let down too many times to believe in lasting kindness. Her voice finally broke the silence. "You don't understand," she whispered. "People like me, we don't get saved. We don't get second chances. Life doesn't give us that." Keanu leaned forward, his eyes steady, his voice calm. "I think you've been saving yourself every single day, Mia. Every time you wake up and keep going for him," he nodded toward Ethan. "That is a second chance. You just don't see it yet." The words cut deep, almost painfully true. Mia swallowed hard, blinking back tears. But before she could reply, Ethan stirred again, fussing and whimpering. She pulled out the small, cracked baby bottle and shook it helplessly, realizing it was almost empty. Her face flushed with shame. "He needs more. But I don't have." She trailed off, her voice breaking. Keanu reached out gently. "May I?" he asked, motioning to the bottle. She hesitated, but finally handed it over. Keanu stood and walked to the counter, speaking quietly to the barista. Moments later, he returned with a fresh bottle of warm milk that the cafe had kindly prepared after his request. He handed it back to her with a soft smile. Mia's hands shook as she took it. "You didn't have to. I wanted to," he said simply. Sometimes small things make the biggest difference. As Ethan drank quietly, his tiny hands wrapped around the bottle, Mia's tears finally spilled. She tried to hide them, but Keanu noticed. "It's okay to cry," he said softly. "Tears don't make you weak. They remind you you're still alive." For a moment, she let herself believe those words. But then, the cafe door opened again and a chill swept inside. This time, it wasn't her landlord. It was a group of young men, loud and careless, their laughter filling the space. They ordered drinks at the counter, their eyes roaming the room until one of them noticed Mia. He smirked, nudging his friend. "Look at that. She doesn't belong here," he muttered, just loud enough for her to hear. Mia's stomach sank, her body tightening. She lowered her gaze, hoping they would ignore her. But the whispers grew louder, sharper. One even chuckled. "Maybe she's begging him for money." Her cheeks burned with humiliation. She wanted to disappear, but before she could move, Keanu's chair scraped softly against the floor. He turned to the group, his expression calm but firm. "You don't know her story," he said quietly, but his words carried across the cafe like thunder. "Don't speak about someone you don't understand." The men laughed at first, but when they met Keanu's eyes, their smirks faded. There was no anger in his gaze, only a steady, unshakable strength that unsettled them. One of them muttered, "Whatever, man," and they turned back to their drinks. The cafe's silence returned, heavier now. Mia looked at Keanu, her voice trembling. "Why do you keep doing this? Standing up for me again and again?" Keanu's answer was quiet, but filled with meaning. "Because I know what it feels like to be misunderstood, to be hurt in silence. And I promised myself that whenever I saw someone carrying that same weight, I wouldn't look away." His words pierced her heart. She wanted to ask more, what pain he had endured, what weight he carried. But something in his eyes told her that his scars were not for display. She whispered, "You speak like someone who's lost a lot." For a moment, he didn't answer. His eyes softened, his jaw tightened slightly, and then he said, "Loss teaches us what matters most. It teaches us not to waste chances to show kindness." Those words hung in the air, heavy with truth. Suddenly, Ethan let out a small laugh in his sleep. The first sound of joy in hours. The sound melted through the tension, drawing a faint smile even from Mia's exhausted face. Keanu leaned forward, his eyes gentle. "See, even in the middle of all this, he can still laugh. That's resilience. He learns it from you." Her lips trembled as she whispered, Maybe you're the first person who's ever really seen me." Keanu didn't look away. Then maybe this is the first night that changes everything. But just as those words sank in, Mia's phone buzzed again. Her eyes widened when she saw the message. It wasn't from her landlord this time. It was from her sister, someone she hadn't spoken to in months. The text read, "Don't come home." It's not safe. Her breath caught, panic filling her eyes. Keanu noticed instantly. "What is it?" he asked gently. Mia's voice shook. "There are people after me. Not just the landlord. There's more to this. And now I don't know where to go." The cafe seemed to grow colder, the weight of her words pulling the air tight around them. Keanu leaned closer, his tone calm but unwavering. "Then you're not facing it alone anymore. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together." Her eyes locked onto his, searching for doubt, but found none. And for the first time in years, Mia felt the faint flicker of something she thought was lost forever. Hope. The cafe had grown almost empty now, only a few people lingering over their late cups of coffee. Outside, the rain had slowed, leaving the streets wet and shining under the dim streetlights. Mia sat frozen, her phone still in her trembling hand. The message from her sister echoed in her mind like a warning bell. "Don't come home. It's not safe." Keanu noticed the way her face had gone pale, the way her arms tightened protectively around Ethan. He leaned forward, his voice calm but steady. "Mia, I need you to tell me what's happening." "What danger are you in?" Her lips trembled. For a moment, she considered staying silent, hiding her truth the way she always had. But something about the way Keanu looked at her gave her courage. There was no judgment in his eyes, only a steady patience that told her she could trust him. She took a shaky breath. "It's not just my landlord. I used to live with my sister. We got caught up with the wrong people. People who wanted money, people who don't forgive when you can't pay. I left to protect Ethan, but they've been looking for me. If I go back, I put her in danger too." Her voice cracked under the weight of the confession. She had carried this fear alone for months, and now the words spilled out like broken pieces. Keanu listened silently, his expression calm but filled with understanding. When she finished, he spoke softly. "You've been carrying all of this by yourself, haven't you?" Tears streamed down her cheeks as she nodded. "I had no choice. No one wanted to help. People just looked at me like I was a problem they didn't want to deal with." Keanu's voice grew firm, steady like an anchor. "You are not a problem. You are a mother fighting for your child, and no one fights alone forever." She covered her face with her hands, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to do anymore. I'm so tired. I just want Ethan to have a future. Something better than this." Keanu reached across the table, not to touch her, but to place his hand close enough so she felt his presence. "He will," he said quietly. "Because you're not invisible anymore. You're not alone." The words broke something open inside her. She sobbed quietly, the sound raw and unfiltered, while Ethan slept peacefully against her chest. After a long silence, Keanu stood. "Come with me," he said gently. "You don't have to go back tonight." Fear flickered in her eyes. "I don't want to drag you into this." He gave a faint smile. "Sometimes being there for someone else isn't being dragged in, it's choosing to stand with them." With hesitation, she followed him out of the cafe. The streets were quiet now, the storm passing, leaving the air fresh. Keanu walked slowly beside her, his posture calm, his presence steady. He guided her to a nearby shelter he knew, a safe place where mothers and children were welcomed without judgment. When they arrived, the staff greeted them warmly. Keanu spoke quietly to one of the workers, arranging for a room for Mia and Ethan. He didn't explain who he was, didn't draw attention to himself. He simply made sure they were safe. As Mia stepped inside the small but warm room, she turned to him, her eyes wide with emotion. "Why are you doing all this?" she whispered. He looked at her with quiet humility. "Because once someone sat beside me when I needed it most. Now it's my turn to do the same for you." Her tears fell again, but this time they were not just from sorrow. They were from the overwhelming weight of being seen, protected, and respected after so long in the shadows. Ethan stirred in her arms, opening his tiny eyes, and for the first time that night, Mia smiled, a real smile. "Fragile but alive," she whispered. "Thank you. Not just for tonight, but for reminding me that kindness still exists." Keanu nodded softly. "Don't thank me. Just remember this moment. And when you're strong again, pass it on to someone else." She held those words close, knowing they were seeds of hope she could one day give to another. As Keanu walked away into the quiet night, his figure blending into the rain-washed streets, Mia felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not fear, not despair, but possibility. She looked down at Ethan, who was drifting back to sleep, and whispered, "We're going to be okay." For the first time in a long time, she believed it. And though the world outside was still filled with struggles and uncertainty, one truth had become clear in her heart: kindness, even from a stranger, could change everything.